Hi again, Rampage fans. Dan Weiss here on SARampage.com. Dave Andrews is the president and CEO of the American Hockey League, now in his 23rd season. Here's part two of my conversation with him. The American Hockey League has been at the forefront of so many innovative ideas in hockey. 3-on-3 started in the American Hockey League, which I know you're really proud of. Of course, the idea of the All-Star Game 3-on-3 tournament last year, which was fantastic as well, too. I want to ask you about one of the new rule changes this year, fighting. And I know it's early in the year, but the American Hockey League was at the forefront of trying to make a change in the rules of fighting, suspending guys for accumulating a certain number of fights. Have you seen, what are the returns on this so far? Is it too early to determine whether or not this rule's been effective?
Yeah, I don't think it's too early. We're seeing things trending in the right direction. I mean, the reason that we began 3 years ago with some legislation to try to cut back on fighting in our league was that the incidents of fights were more than double what they were in the National Hockey League. And if we're going to be a development league for the NHL, our young players ought to be able to play in an environment that's similar. And as you know, we had players coming down from the NHL who had been in that enforcer role, and we had players coming up into our league in that role, and we were seeing a lot of fights that were perhaps not really related to the competition in that particular game. They were more the fact that you had people whose role it was to do that, so they found the other guy on the other team and did it. And in terms of player safety, we didn't think it was great, and it wasn't a great trend. So 2 years ago, we brought in a rule, or 3 years ago now, Dan, we brought in a rule that if you had two fights in the same game, you were ejected from the game. That was a step in the right direction. And then with the new legislation this year, those two things combined, if we go back 3 years ago and measure it up, we were at, I think, 0.86 fights per game. We're now down to 0.44 or something like that. And I think that's going to continue to drop because as players get closer to that threshold, they're going to be a little more selective about when they engage another player. So, it's a debate in the hockey world as to the place in fighting in the game. But I think what we're seeing is, there is still room for a legitimate, situation where someone goes over the line and emotions get high that they settle it. But that shouldn't happen very often, and it certainly shouldn't happen as in my opinion at least, as a full-time job for any individual player.
How often is the AHL's competition committee in conversation with the NHL's competition committee for what you're doing down here, and I guess the process of how that eventually gets applied to the National Hockey League?
Well, the two committees don't really interact. It's more myself with our folks, our competition committee, and I deal with Gary Bettman at the National League level and Bill Daly a fair amount. And I would say that we have operated for the most part in terms of our player safety initiatives and some of the game-changing innovation that we've done. We've operated for the most part on our own and established things that we thought were good for the game. We've, over the years, a number of times tested rules for the NHL at their request because if we felt it wouldn't damage the integrity of competition and they wanted us to try something, like hybrid icing was a good example, which was not something we invented. We brought that in at the request of the NHL, tested it for 3/4 of a year, and I think everyone liked what they saw, and when the NHL came back from that lockout year, they brought hybrid icing in. But we've done that a few times, and then we've had other innovations that were our own. And not that it matters who takes credit for it. It's good for the game to innovate. And so our competition committee has always been very supportive of where we were trying to take our game, and the NHL has adopted some of those things, and others they haven't. So it's but I think we've played an important role there.
Lastly, Tom Rowe just recently became the latest American Hockey League head coach to step behind the bench in the National Hockey League. Our affiliate, Colorado, their head coach, Jared Bednar, came from the Lake Erie, now the Cleveland Monsters, who won a Calder Cup championship. When you sit and look back and see players, personnel, broadcasters that are now sprinkled through the National Hockey League in your time as the president of the American Hockey League, what emotions does that bring up for you?
Well, you feel very good about it. I think when I first started in this role, back in '94, we were trying to build a development league, and clearly we've been successful doing that. I mean, we're at a point now where almost 90% of the players in the NHL have come through our league. And I guess if you look back at 23 years of being the president, there's been an awful lot of players come through our league that went on to the NHL and had success. And you're very proud of that, and we're thankful that we're providing an opportunity for young players to get themselves ready for the NHL, that we have that capacity to do that for them. And it's, as you know, Dan, it's not just players. It's referee. Every referee in the NHL came through our league. Most of the linesmen came through our league. Most of the broadcasters came through our league, and the coaches. I think we're at 22 or 23 of the 30 head coaches in the NHL that coached in the American League on their way there. So it's kind of fun for us. I mean, anytime I watch a game or go to an NHL city, I mean, you basically know most of the guys, and it's fun, and it's great to have those young players coming in, still looking for that opportunity and have the quality of play that we have in the league.
Dave, continued success here in this American Hockey League season. Look forward to seeing you down in San Antonio again.
Great, thanks a lot, Dan.
That's Dave Andrews, President and CEO of the American Hockey League.